Good morning, everyone. This next couple of weeks, we're going to do something a little bit different. So as you may know, in Joe's absence for the month of February, Sarah Pringle is going to be taking over. And for her sermons this month, she's going to be focusing on Black history because February is Black History Month. And she's going to be focusing quite a bit on spirituals. And I love spirituals. And I just think they're very powerful. And so I thought, you know what, maybe I will parallel what she's doing and talk about spirituals in the next few lessons in honor of Black History Month and to parallel what Sarah's doing. So it should be a lot of fun. Now, Joe, I don't know how he plays music over the computer. I've never been able to have success with that, even if I try it with not from the computer, on the computer. But so I'm not going to be playing any spirituals for you, but I will have some. I'm going to share some links for you to go listen to some on your own, and that will be your assignment. So pretty fun assignment. So February is Black History Month, and spirituals have a very important part of that history. A spiritual is a religious song that relates to the experience of those who used to be enslaved in this country. Now, the word spiritual comes from the King James translation of the Bible verse, Ephesians 5:19, and the verse reads, "Speaking to yourself in psalms and hymns and spiritual songs, singing and making melody in your heart to the Lord." And spirituals are the blend of the music, is the blend of the Christian religion of the enslaved Africans that was discovered in the American South, and the African-style songs from their homeland. Now, these early enslaved people would blend their style of music, their own music that was from their homeland, with Christianity. And it's singing as a form of communication is deeply rooted in that culture. And when Africans were kidnapped and shipped across the Atlantic during the Middle Passage and to be brought on as slaves, they used singing as a way to communicate during the voyage and as a way to stay alive through their oppression and unjust treatment later on. So there's three ways that you can think of spirituals, or they can be broken up into three groups based on the time that they were sung the most and when they came from. So the first category is those spirituals from the time of enslavement. In the 18th century, the enslaved Africans would gather together in sort of these camp meetings outdoors. And there they would sing and dance, and sometimes it would appear as if they were in a trance. And at times they would also perform ring shout style, which is a shuffling circular dance with chanting and hand clapping. And this can be seen in some of the faster versions of the spirituals, such as Swing Low, Sweet Chariot, and Jesus Led Me All the Way. Now, Swing Low, Sweet Chariot, you think of as this slow song, right? And it is often sung that way, but I did happen across a fast version of it, just as I've been looking at spirituals, and it was wonderful. So I encourage you to sort of check that one out because it's probably a version that you haven't heard before. Now, those who were enslaved were drawn to the parallels between their different situation and those difficult situation and those in the Bible stories. So there was Moses, who would lead the Israelites out of slavery in Egypt. And after the Israelites' emancipation, Moses led the escaped Israelites through the desert to the promised land, or Canaan. In the Bible, Canaan was the land God promised to the Israelites. This hope for a better future is found in some of the lyrics of spirituals, which is, "O Canaan, sweet Canaan, I am bound for the land of Canaan." The influential abolitionist and former enslaved person Frederick Douglass wrote of this spiritual in his book, My Bondage is My Freedom, in 1855, a long time ago. And Douglass said that the spiritual spoke of getting into heaven. He said it was also about the enslaved people arriving in the North where they could find freedom. At times, those who were enslaved would sing spirituals to strengthen their resolve or to persevere towards a better future. Not only would the songs have double meanings, but they would sometimes have messages. And we're going to talk about this more in a future lesson. Those who were enslaved would also sing songs while working in the fields. And some spirituals have encoded messages like Go Down Moses, which Harriet Tubman used when she was a conductor for the Underground Railroad. She would use this song to let people know that she was there to help them when they escaped. Now, the next category of spirituals is those that arose during emancipation. So in 1863, the Emancipation Proclamation was signed by Abraham Lincoln, and this meant that some enslaved people were free. But unfortunately, as you probably know, slavery still continued to exist. And even those former slaves who had been freed, they didn't have the same rights as the rest of the country and as white Americans. Even after there was the 13th Amendment to the Constitution was passed a couple of years later, making slavery illegal in the whole country, those who used to be enslaved still did not have equal rights. So as these newly freed people searched for jobs and homes, they continued to face unjust treatment. And some examples of the racism they encountered, not being able to get jobs and fair pay because of the color of their skin. And so during this time, they would continue to use spirituals to express their frustration over this unequal treatment. And also to sing spirituals as a hope for their better life. And that's one of the things I really enjoy about spirituals, because it's a lot about hardship, but there's always this thread, even when they're in the minor key. So in music, if something is in a minor key, it's usually more sad than if it's in a major key. But even those spirituals that are in a minor key, and they're about troubled times, there's this thread of hope and perseverance in them. And you could hear it just in the music, even without in the words, I think. And that's one of the reasons I really appreciate them. Now, the Montgomery Bus Boycott from 1955 to 1966 used spirituals to strengthen people's resolve during their year-long refusal to use the bus. During this boycott, Black people would share rides or walk, so they didn't have to use the bus. And in some cases, their commute to work took longer if they actually caught the bus. So one spiritual they sang to persevere through this time was Keep Your Eyes on the Prize. And I bet that's something one year that you're familiar with. It is based on the gospel hymn, Keep Your Hands on the Plow, but they changed the words to fit their current boycott circumstances. Now, the Montgomery Bus Boycott sort of marks the start of the civil rights movement in the 50s, where people would come together to demand equal treatment for all Americans. And this is the third and final category of spirituals that we're going to talk about. The 1960s was the era of protest songs and freedom songs music. And spirituals changed into songs that had a political message or that hoped for change. So during the civil rights movement, people used music to express their views on justice and equality. And protest songs were a very popular form of music at the time. They could be heard not only at the rallies for equal rights, but they could be heard on the radio as well. So Keep Your Eyes on the Prize, for example. This was just one of many of the songs that was adapted from spirituals to be used during the civil rights movement. One really famous song that I can sort of guarantee you all know, We Shall Overcome. And that came by mixing the gospel hymn, I'll Overcome Someday, with the spiritual, I'll Be All Right. So combining the songs allowed protesters to link their past trials with their current unequal treatment, right? Because they took these traditional spirituals and so that they had the tradition, and they mixed them with gospel hymns. And so they were allowed sort of linking past troubles with their current situation, which was still so difficult. But during the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom in 1963, Bob Dylan, who I know those of you who are of the older type of kids, of course, have heard of Bob Dylan, and I hope you younger kids, actual kids, have heard of Bob Dylan too. And Joan Baez, Peter, Paul, and Mary. Hopefully you recognize some of these names, all artists I really enjoy. They would perform during the March on Washington to show their support for that movement. And often protest songs would describe something that's going on in the community or in the world. They describe the kind of changes they would like to see happen. Protest songs can be angry because of everything that, all the unequal treatment that was happening, or sad about it, or optimistic. And they've been written in all different styles. So from folk to soul to hip hop even. Songs like What's Going On, and Change Is Gonna Come, for example, of protest songs. So there's no doubt spirituals have been such an important part of Black history and really important part of American culture. During each of these periods of struggle that I talked about, people have used songs and spirituals specifically to help them persevere and to help them be strong and make change and better their lives. Songs are used to communicate messages and used to hope for a better future for all people. And while there's been different styles of spirituals over the year, the purpose has been the same with all of them. And that is to sing about the experience and the history. So I'll leave it there for today. And the next, as I said, I'll be talking about more spirituals, a little more specifically, and in the next few lessons, and I look forward to it. Oh, and your song for this week is I Couldn't Hear Nobody Pray, your spiritual for the week. And I will post the link in the YouTube description and on the Facebook comments when I post this on Facebook as well. So have a great week. Be kind to yourselves, be kind to others as well. And I'll see you next time.